Hello, let's go. This is your man Flip, and thank you for spending 15 minutes with me today. Ready to talk about free agency. It's the 2018 offseason. Time off for the Minnesota Vikings players, our favorite 53. But my time away is officially over. We gotta start with me telling you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Bloomington, Minnesota before moving to the East Coast when I was about 8 years old. The great part about being a sports fan in this day and age is that I was able to take the Vikings with me. I'm a true transplant fan, starting with reading the box scores and trading cards in the earlier 90s. I stayed up late watching NFL Primetime with Chris Berman and Tom Jackson. That was the only way I'd get to see highlights of the Vikings. I still know all the songs on that show by heart. Then I'd wake up early to watch Ron Jaworski on NFL Matchup, where I could get my weekly dose of the X's and O's. After that, I used AOL to check on my team regularly, and so by the time my family moved back to Woodbury, I'd been bleeding purple for more than a decade. Currently, I'm in Dallas, and social media has brought me closer to even more Vikings fan. I'm also a regular contributor on climbingthepocket.com. If you've interacted with me on Twitter, I hope you'll acknowledge that I bring passion to every facet of the Minnesota Vikings. Give me a shout, @FlipMozzie. I like to challenge the typical ways of thinking about our purple. We won't always agree, and it's not my goal to persuade anybody. My goal is to understand the different points of view, and I hope that you're willing to do the same through respectful and much too long-winded conversations. Now, I want everybody to understand, I'm not an expert analyst, I don't have inside sources. Outside of watching every Vikings game, I'm not watching film, unless it's like the Minneapolis Miracle. I'm watching that game 5 times because that was awesome. I'm just a fan who loves digging into all the available articles, videos, and stats about our Vikings. The Vikings have been an up and down affair. They're one of the best teams to never win a Super Bowl, even though they've got the 12th most Super Bowl appearances and 6th best regular season record throughout the history of the NFL. There have been several heartbreaking moments, from Staubach in '75 to Blair Walsh in 2015. So yeah, it's easy to be a skeptical Vikings fan. That's not my attitude though. I take a leap of faith in this team. Support the full roster. I choose to be ignorantly hopeful because honestly, I just don't enjoy watching games in a state of fear. Optimism isn't always easy, but it's more fun. So with all that said, I'm sure you're eager to hear what I have to say about free agency. Let's set the stage. I want to take us back to August 29th, 2017. Despite a thrilling comeback led by Taylor Heineke a day earlier, Vikings fans were in a state of panic. We had just watched the third preseason game, the most important preseason game, and it wasn't good. In the first half against the 49ers, quarterback Sam Bradford was his usual efficient self, with nothing to show for it. He passed for 134 yards, 81% completion rate, but no touchdowns and a typically low 6.4 yards per attempt. The offensive line was poor, allowing him to get sacked 3 times. The run game struggled too. None of the running backs, Dalvin Cook, Jerick McKinnon, or Latavius Murray, averaged above 4 yards per carry. It looked like 2016 all over again. And even the starting defense put in a terrible effort. They allowed Brian Hoyer, of all people, to shred them for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns, while averaging 10.4 yards per attempt. Those touchdowns came on San Francisco's first 2 drives, which were 79 and 88 yards long. You could have called it a fluke if we hadn't seen the same thing in Seattle a week earlier. There, our purple defense allowed 232 yards on Seattle's first 4 drives, 2 of which resulted in touchdowns. They looked like the worst version of 2016. So we entered the regular season with no questions answered. We hadn't seen enough from Dalvin Cook. The supposedly improved offensive line wasn't healthy. We feared the same old Sam Bradford and a defensive regression. Then, starting Monday night, week 1 against New Orleans, they proved we had nothing to fear. In 2017, the Vikings put together an epic run that exceeded all expectations. They went 13-3 while losing Cook during week 4 against Detroit and getting only 6 healthy quarters from Bradford. Just incredible. 2017 was the best season the last decade for the Vikings. Better than 2009, and it's not close. 2017 had more wins than 2009. It was a bigger surprise than 2009. It had far better stories, from Everson Griffin's 8-game sack streak to Adam Thielen's 91-catch, 1,200-yard breakout season. We saw redemption for quarterback Case Keenum, fighting off doubters and haters to register a top 10 year in completion percentage and ESPN QBR. Case delivered 12 wins and that spiraling 35-yard strike to Stephon Diggs, who scampered another 35 to knock off the Saints in the playoffs. And you know what? The heartbreak was less than 2009 too. It was a terrible loss to end the year, and there were no moral victories, but it was a great season regardless. So that's where we stand. This offseason is about building greatness on top of greatness. The current quarterback situation gives this offseason big, franchise-changing implications. First, let's realize that no franchise has ever been here before. A conference championship team in need of a quarterback is rare. Having 3 of their quarterbacks hit free agency is even rarer. Then, there's the best free agent quarterback under the age of 30 since Drew Brees out there. And there's 6 viable quarterbacks in the NFL draft. Nothing compares to this. With all these options, we're lucky to have quarterback guru and an unbiased John DeFilippo coming in as offensive coordinator. If he can get settled, I'd lean on his experience with a variety of quarterbacks, both good and bad, to give perspective in the Vikings quarterback search. Like I said before, this isn't the time to get cautious in free agency. Think of it this way. The Vikings play the Rams on the road next year instead of home. They play in Philadelphia instead of Washington. They go to Foxborough and Seattle, and New Orleans is on the schedule again too. That, combined with a healthy Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, means Minnesota must improve. So how are you going to get drastically better? Dalvin Cook will be back, but even I admit that running backs have muted impacts in the current NFL. Is improved depth at defensive tackle going to get you there? Probably not. Can another pass-catching tight end make that difference? No way. How about a marginal upgrade over Terrence Newman? We know the answer. Even all 4 combined might not do it, and that assumes all the signings pan out. The answer here is quarterback. The Vikings need an outside performance at the position, similar to what Sam Bradford gave us in Week 1 and what Case Keenum gave us for 15 games, but they need that more consistently. So which quarterbacks can give you that? Those should be the only targets. I performed a study that considered how often 16 different quarterbacks were able to achieve a 65% completion rate and 7.5 yards per attempt in the same game. Teams win about 78% of their games when their quarterback is able to do that. The 16 quarterbacks accomplish this feat 26% of the time on average. Case Keenum finished 14th out of 16 in this study. Sam placed 11th. Teddy came in 6th, and Kirk Cousins came in 2nd. That pretty much sums up my view on the Vikings quarterback situation. I'm looking for the most consistent long-term guy they can find. If you want a long track record, get Kirk Cousins. If you prefer value, ride with a healthy Teddy. Sam is your plan B, and thank you for everything, Case. We'll always have 2017. Now for the rest of free agency. Cap-wise, we gotta grind through the numbers a little bit. I'm making a couple moves. First, I'm cutting defensive tackle Sharif Floyd and saving $6.7 million. Floyd showed promise for a couple seasons before getting injured and failing to regain health. Second, I'm assuming Anthony Barr's sure-to-come extension reduces his 2018 cap hit slightly from $12.3 to $11.5 million. He'd be a top 10 outside linebacker at that number before the big money comes later on a long-term deal. Then, Spotrac values Minnesota's 7 draft picks at $5.4 million, and I'm setting $8.9 million aside for my rainy day fund. That leaves the Vikings with $41 million left to spend. Obviously, things change a bit based on which quarterback you sign, not just because of price, but also because what each QB needs to succeed may be a bit different. There's also the fact that some of the top tier positions will be gone by the time Minnesota figures out their quarterback situation. If you bring Kirk Cousins in at $27 million, the Vikings will have at least $14 million left to spend. My priority in this scenario is to shore up the defense. I'm going at defensive tackle as the primary need and paying $5 to $6 million to acquire someone who can solidify the interior. I'm targeting Dontari Poe, Benny Logan, and Dominique Easley. Next, I'm tapping into this deep free agent quarterback pool. Guys like Nikel Roby-Coleman, TJ Carey, and Aaron Colvin are names you should look out for. I'm looking to sign a guy with starting experience to a $4 million contract at most. Terrence Newman made $3.3 last year, so I feel that's a fair number. Finally, I'm getting the scat back to add some competition and spell Dalvin Cook if needed on passing downs. I like Darren Sproles and Lance Dunbar as the best options, but I'm not spending more than $1 million here. And that's it. I think a free agency that brings us Cousins, Poe, Roby-Coleman, and Dunbar would be a somewhat realistic dream. It would cost $38 million total, leaving Minnesota with $17 million to spend for the rest of the year. Now I know there will be two main questions. What about offensive line? How are we going to re-sign our guys? The strategy is to upgrade at offensive guard with the first pick in the draft. At pick 30, the Vikings can get their guy or trade down into the second round, a sweet spot for interior linemen. I'm also looking to re-sign Stephon Diggs before the season begins. If the Vikings draft well at running back and tight end, that'll allow them to restructure Latavius Murray and Kyle Rudolph to help free up about $9 million in total cap for Diggs. Not a bad plan, right? There's only one way to end this pod. It's with the free agent strategy that includes re-signing our main man, Teddy Bridgewater. Using the same cap moves, Minnesota would again have $41 million to spend. It's pretty hard to know what Teddy's value is, so I'll use his fifth-year option amount, which the Vikings declined last year. That's $12 million for Bridgewater, leaving $29 million left to spend. With Teddy, I'm starting along the offensive line. We can dream about Andrew Norwell, but I don't think he'll be available. Instead, I'm setting my sights on Justin Pugh, Josh Sitton, and Ryan Jensen. Bring one of them in for $9 million. In addition to that scat back for $1 million, the additional cap room allows the Vikings to pursue a tight end as well. Most are crazy for Trey Burton, but pay attention to Tyler Eifert and Austin Seferian-Jenkins too. $7 million should get it done. But we aren't completely ignoring the defense here either. In fact, let's attack that free agent cornerback market in a big way here. Throw down $9 million at Malcolm Butler, Rashad Breeland, or EJ Gaines. That results in the overall dream of Bridgewater, Sitton, Gaines, Seferian-Jenkins, and Dunbar while spending again $38 million. Then you turn around and make defensive tackle the priority in the draft. So how does that sound? Do you believe? Do you love my plan or hate it? Let me know your questions, concerns, and comments, and thank you for listening. Time to shut it down.